With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown.
And I am Yolana Weeks.
Our top stories.
A triple celebration for the St. Kitts Nevis Fire and Rescue Services hosts a week of activities.
ECCB Governor highlights strategic priorities for ECCU development during 2025 IMF spring meetings. St. Kitts Nevis marks historic progress in road infrastructure and water development. Cheslin Hutton in police custody. Grenada addresses recommendations in human rights report other countries have recommended. St. Lucia and Martinique strengthen ties with new agreements. Internationally, Sudan severs ties with the UAE after RSF drone strikes on Port Sudan. Now, the details.
Officers within the St. Kitts and Nevis Fire and Rescue Services, SKNFRS, gathered at the Antioch Baptist Church on Sunday, May 4, 2025, International Firefighters Day, to celebrate and honor the dedication and courageous efforts of firefighters worldwide. The organization's Chief Fire Officer, Romel Williams, reflected on the invaluable work of firefighters and also acknowledged the heroism and the sacrificial service of firefighters who retired, died in service, or perished in the line of duty.
Today is a day that we set aside to, as Pastor would have mentioned earlier, to commemorate and to honor the lives and the sacrifices of the officers who would have passed away, whether in service, in the line of duty, or who would have served unto retirement. We take this opportunity to thank each and every one of them for their sacrificial service and for their commitment and for their love for their communities. And so we really want to thank us for what we do on a daily basis.
International Firefighters Day was a successful proposal made by a female Australian firefighter, Miss J.J. Edmondson, on January 4, 1999. This day was proposed to honor, in the first instance, the 5 firefighters who lost their lives in the bushfires of Australia on December 2, 1998, and later the September 11, 2001 attacks in the United States. International Firefighters Day coincides with the 25th anniversary celebration of the St. Kitts and Nevis Fire and Rescue Services and the 25th anniversary of the Caribbean Association of Firefighters, of which St. Kitts and Nevis is a member and represented on the executive.
Surprisingly enough, the St. Kitts Nevis Fire and Rescue Services was separated from police on the 4th of January, 1 year later, after International Firefighters Day was in place. And so we share some commonalities with the International Firefighters Day. And so we are here celebrating not just International Firefighters Day, we are here celebrating still throughout the year our 25th birthday as the St. Kitts Nevis Fire and Rescue Services. We are also celebrating with the Caribbean Association of Firefighters, who is also celebrating 25 years this year. And St. Kitts would have been one of the founding departments when that department was started. So I take the opportunity to wish CAF happy birthday.
Meanwhile, a contingent from Antigua and Barbuda, the British Virgin Islands and Guyana joined the St. Kitts and Nevis Fire and Rescue Services for its week of activities. Some of the organized activities include an open day at schools, a fun run through Bastille, a drill competition, a fun day, and a dinner. The fire chief said any assistance, financial or otherwise, would be appreciated. Firefighters are unsung heroes who stand between danger and safety, embodying the spirit of selflessness and bravery. Mr. Williams requested the prayers of the public.
Most importantly, as usual, what I'm asking for is for prayer. I'm asking for the church to continue to pray for the fire and rescue services, that God will continue to keep us, to preserve us, that when we go out, we come back in. And it is very scary not knowing what to expect. And so we are always grateful whenever everybody comes back home. And so I want to ask you to continue to pray for us so that we continue to come home, so that families don't have to grieve, and so that we work until we retire, so we could enjoy our retirement. like some of our retirees we have here presently with us.
The work of the fire services includes more than extinguishing flames. It also includes preventing fires, educating communities, and providing critical emergency services.
At the recently held 2025 spring meeting of the World Bank Group and the International Monetary Fund, IMF, in Washington, D.C., Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB, Timothy N.J. Antwine, engaged in critical discussions on mobilizing financial resources to address the development needs of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, ECCU. During a pivotal roundtable on domestic resource mobilization, Governor Antwine underscored several key areas essential to attracting private capital and fostering sustainable growth within the ECCU. He highlighted the urgency of building local capacity in high-impact sectors, suggesting that local capacity building in physical and digital infrastructure, trade logistics, and energy security is necessary, with emphasis on closing policy and regulatory gaps, which act as barriers in attracting private capital to the table for these critical sectors. Governor Antwine emphasized the role of multilateral development banks in expanding their approach to credit guarantees, particularly targeting low-income countries and small island developing states, SIDS. In addition to financial strategies, Governor Antwine reflected on the innovative framework of catastrophe risk management pioneered by the Caribbean. He recalled the genesis of the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility, CCRIF, established in 2007 following the destruction caused by Hurricane Ivan in 2004. CCRIF became the world's first multi-country catastrophe risk pool, a model now emulated by regions including Africa and Southeast Asia. Amid a backdrop of pronounced global economic uncertainty and subdued growth forecasts, Governor Antwine identified 4 key areas for bolstering collaboration between the ECCU and the IMF during the Western Hemisphere Department Directors meeting with Caribbean Ministers of Finance and Central Bank governors. Advanced macroeconomic modeling to better understand the impact of overall external shocks on vital ECCU sectors such as tourism and the Citizenship by Investment programs. Enhanced tailor-made debt sustainability analyses that effectively incorporate climate and other systemic shocks confronting ECCU member states, the development of a green finance market within the currency union promoting sustainable investment aligned with global environmental goals, and formulating comprehensive data and artificial intelligence AI strategies. Elaborating on the AI priority, Governor Antwine mused that data is the new oil, which must be refined and processed to maximize its value. The 2025 spring meetings sought to deepen coordination and dialogue between the IMF and Caribbean nations, focusing on resilience-building measures critical to the region's future. The long-standing partnership between the IMF, the ECCU countries, and the ECCB continues to underpin efforts for sustainable development and economic stability within the Eastern Caribbean. Governor Antwine's engagements and strategic vision at this international forum reaffirms the ECCB's commitment to strengthening the ECCU's financial architecture and fostering regional growth in an increasingly complex global economic landscape. During the Friday, May 2nd, 2025 sitting of the National Assembly, Minister of Public Infrastructure and Water, the Honorable Conress Maynard, delivered a compelling and detailed statement on the transformative progress the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party government has achieved in enhancing the nation's road infrastructure and addressing its critical water sector challenges. The minister's remarks underscored the government's unprecedented investments and bold initiatives to revitalize infrastructure and secure sustainable water access for citizens. Minister Maynard began by reflecting on conversations with members of the public, highlighting that even those close to him were unaware of the substantial accomplishments his ministry has made in the last 2.5 years.
I wish to report tremendous progress that has been made under the leadership of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party government, led by the member for constituency number 8 as our Prime Minister, in just 2.5 years. This administration came into office with a clear mandate to rebuild, to revitalize, and to deliver tangible improvements to the lives of our people, and we have done exactly that.
The minister painted a robust picture of what he described as
the largest road infrastructure expansion project ever executed in the first 2.5 years of any administration.
Noting a committed investment of approximately $80 million across the Federation.
Let the record then show some of these, which I will list that have been done so far. In terms of complete resurfacing, and sometimes you drive after the roads are fixed, you drive on them and forget that they were actually in horrible conditions. So I will jog the memory of everyone. Warner Park was done. Bay Road East, Boyd's Village by Bronte Welch Primary School, Market Street, Spot Street, Lower Monkey Hill is now finished, right, PM?
Well, not yet. Thank you.
Yes. Fort Lands, that's by the Cardi building, Wigley Avenue, Trafalgar, Otley's Village, Harris's, Limekeel Housing, Limekeel Main Road, that's what we call the Abattoir Road, New Road East, Southwell Drive.
Minister Maynard further detailed ongoing improvements involving new concrete roads valued at over $30 million spanning communities such as the racecourse in Newton Ground, Palmetto Point, Boyd's View, White House in St. Peters, Shadwell West and South, and several more, which remain in design stages. The scope of work extends to major road development projects, including the St. Peters Main Road and the F.T. Williams Highway East, which connect key economic and residential zones from the airport to northern districts.
This is in excess of $80 million of road projects in under 2.5 years. This is a tremendous achievement and none can compare.
Maynard emphasized, noting that these roads are much more than blacktop.
There are arteries of economic activity, lifelines for families, and symbols of a government that works for the people.
The minister also spoke candidly about the challenges faced, including the dilapidated state of road machinery, which required nearly a year's worth of repairs. This illustrates the complexity and scale of the revival of infrastructure. Perhaps most striking was Minister Maynard's declaration of historic water sector investments, startlingly contrasting what he called the stagnation of the previous 7.5 years.
For 7.5 years before our administration, negligible, almost zero development was done in any critical aspect of our water sector. It is one of the least developed areas that I met in the ministry that I lead. Today I can declare that this government has made the largest investment in water development in the history of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Highlighting a more than 400% increase in the water budget, the minister laid out ambitious plans to elevate national water production capacity by 3 million gallons per day by August 2025, a more than 50% increase on the current levels of 5.5 million gallons a day.
Safeguarding our future and meeting the demands of our growing population.
He provided tangible examples such as the new water well in Keon producing excess water due to limited storage capacity and desalinated water from Royal Utilities easing pressure on the Bastyr Valley aquifer. The minister also acknowledged the fruition of a UAE-funded project, a desalination plant initiated under the former administration but stalled until the current government pushed it forward. Most importantly, Minister Maynard previewed the near completion of the country's first ever 2 million gallon per day desalination plant, which was built entirely from concept to commissioning at the C.A. Paul Southwell industrial site.
By God's grace, in a few months, you will all feel the results.
Plans are also underway to survey areas from Sandy Point moving westward and northward from the potential identification of 10 additional water wells, underscoring the government's strategic, forward-looking approach to water security infrastructure. Acknowledging current frustrations with water rationing, he urged understanding.
Unfortunately, we can't turn on the switch overnight, and I want to acknowledge the frustrations of many who still have to bear the rationing of water. That is because, as you know, You cannot build a home or a house or anything overnight, but we have laid the foundation.
Throughout his statement, Minister Maynard framed the government's work as physical construction, rebuilding trust, and restoring hope.
This administration is not just about also just building roads or water systems, but we are building trust, restoring hope, and shaping a future that reflects the aspirations of our people.
He hinted at further discussions on electricity infrastructure upgrades, noting substantial investment in the Needmas power plant's 18-megawatt development, which will significantly increase national capacity by more than 60%. In closing, Maynard issued a confident challenge to any skeptics.
In just 2.5 years, there is none. Nobody can compare. I challenge them for the first 2.5 years of any administration to the advancements we have already made in these two, and I have not even spoken about electricity, where we have also made the largest investment in the upgrade of the Needmas power plant, presently undergoing 18-megawatt development of power at the power station, far exceeding 60% of 50-60% of our present capacity. But we will speak more on that at another time. So in just 2.5 years, the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party government has laid a foundation that generations will continue to build upon. This is a record of performance in 2.5 years. This is an administration of delivery. And at 2.5 years, it is just the beginning.
The National Assembly and the citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis alike now watch with anticipation as the government's landmark projects continue to develop, marking a potentially defining era for the island's infrastructure and sustainable development. On May 2nd, 2025, the police arrested Cheslin Hutton of Cotton Ground, Nevis. He was apprehended at Port Zante, St. Kitts after a warrant for his arrest was issued on April 25th, 2025. According to the wanted poster, he was arrested concerning an undisclosed serious criminal matter. Due to the nature of the investigation, the police have not provided further information. Before his arrest, the police shared that they were informed that Hutton was spotted in St. Eustatius. The Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force expressed gratitude to the concerned citizens and residents of St. Kitts and Nevis, as well as neighbors in St. Eustatius, who the police said shouldered this civic duty without hesitation. In regional news, Grenada addresses recommendations in human rights report other countries have recommended, Grenada Broadcasting Network reports.
Roxy McLeish Hutchinson, Permanent Secretary with responsibility for foreign affairs in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Export Development, led Grenada's delegation for the 2025 Universal Periodic Review, the UPR, which was conducted in Geneva today, May 5th. She was supported by Ray Thomas from the Ministry of Legal Affairs. The UPR is a United Nations process where all 193 UN member states are reviewed on their human rights records every 4.5 years. On January 27, 2020 in Geneva, Grenada received 148 recommendations following its presentation. Germany, in its recommendation, praised the initiatives undertaken by Grenada towards women and recommended repealing the section of the law that discriminates against sexual orientation.
Germany welcomes the delegation of Grenada and commends Grenada for its efforts to respect, protect and promote human rights, including to combat violence and discrimination against women and with respect to economic, social and cultural rights. Germany also commends Grenada for cooperating with the UN human rights system, including treaty bodies.
Guyana, in its presentation, welcomed the draft Sex Offenders Registry Law and the changes made to the Education Act, which increased the age at which children can leave school.
We join others in commending the delegation for their comprehensive report. We commend Grenada on the many strides it has made since the last cycle in implementing recommendations from the last review and the passage and enactment of several important legislations, which include the compulsory school age legislation of 2024. Our commendations to Grenada for addressing the pension reforms for the public sector employees and the ongoing collaboration with the International Labour Organization to address the conditions of work.
The delegation of Iceland also expressed both praise and concerns about Grenada's human rights records and offered 6 suggestions that may not only require legislative changes, but a constitutional change.
In the spirit of constructive engagement, Iceland recommends the following. 1. Abolish the death penalty. 2. Ratify the second operational protocol of the ICCPR. 3. Adopt the reproductive health rights policy, ensuring impactful, sustainable and equitable action on sexual and reproductive health and rights. 4. Amend the criminal code to legalize abortion under all circumstances. 5. Eliminate barriers to justice for GBV survivors by abolishing the requirement for third-party cooperation in sexual violence cases. 6. Provide comprehensive sexuality education in schools. 7. Decriminalize same-sex relations between consenting adults by repealing Articles 430 and 431 of the Criminal Code. 8. Introduce comprehensive anti-discrimination laws and ensure legal protection for persons of diverse socio. I wish Grenada all success for its review. I thank you.
For GBN News, Janelle Dick.
St. Lucia and Martinique strengthen ties with new agreements. DBS St. Lucia has that story.
The government of St. Lucia has made major progress in settling its long-standing debt to the Centre Hospitalier Universitaire de Martinique, or the CHUM, with over $3 million paid towards arrears dating back more than 20 years. The announcement followed a high-level meeting between Prime Minister Honorable Philippe J. Pierre and the director of the CHUM in Martinique during the Prime Minister's official one-day mission to Martinique. The arrears covered the cost of specialist care for St. Lucian patients referred to the CHUM. This payment helps safeguard access to life-saving treatment for St. Lucians, especially in emergencies or where local services fall short. In addition to health cooperation, the Prime Minister met with the Préfet of Martinique and the High Command of the Martinique Police and JADAM to deepen bilateral cooperation on citizen security and border protection. He was joined by Honorable Jeremiah Norbert, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for home affairs, crime prevention and persons with disabilities, and Commissioner of Police Mr. Vern Gard. Alison Joseph, Consul General of St. Lucia in Martinique, was also in attendance.
Strong relationship between Martinique and St. Lucia, but we also have some issues, and the main issue that I still got basic issue on Charlie Track, both the illicit drugs and also the trafficking of arms, illicit arms. And the St. Lucia government has a zero tolerance towards crime, towards any sort of crime, any sort of illegality. We have a zero tolerance. So we'll work with our friends in Martinique, meaning our law enforcement agencies have developed a very strong bond. People told about the relationship that we have somebody in the embassy in the Castries working on these issues. So we are linked to, we have no stone unturned to make the waters between Martinique and St. Lucia clean, pure, pristine, not only in terms of environment, but in terms of illegality. We will work, we will cooperate, our law enforcement people will cooperate with each other. We will strengthen our intelligence, we will strengthen our capabilities, we will strengthen our means of detection of crime.
Talks focused on joint action to prevent and disrupt illegal activity across both jurisdictions and a tour of the national security infrastructure. The visit also expanded bilateral discussions beyond health and security, touching on trade, migration, regional integration and language development. The payment to the Centre Hospitalier Universitaire de Martinique, or the CHUM, not only strengthens St. Lucia's partnership with France Martinique, but also reflects the government's commitment to sustaining access to critical healthcare for its citizens. At the same time, deeper security cooperation reinforces a shared commitment to citizen safety and the rule of law.
We now bring you these international reports.
For the third consecutive day, people in the eastern city of Port Sudan woke up to plumes of smoke over its skies. Drone attacks by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces targeted a hotel near the residence of the army chief, the airport, the main seaport, a power station, and a military base. The RSF has been fighting the army for more than 2 years. But it's only in recent days it started to target the city, which was one of the safest since the conflict began. The attacks caused panic in Port Sudan.
I see that the RSF are targeting strategic areas. In this way, the gravest harm is to the people. Just now, I came from the gas station. It's overcrowded. So fuel will be scarce in the coming days. Gas will also be scarce too, so we are headed to a period of severe inflation in addition to the current inflation.
The entire issue is really strange. In any war, armed men are fighting one another. But in our case, it's civilians who are being targeted. Harm is inflicted upon us, civilians, not on the army or the RSF. We are paying the heaviest price.
Port Sudan has been the unofficial capital since the start of the conflict in April 2023 and seat of government, even after the army regained control of most of Khartoum in late March. It's also the country's humanitarian hub and the supply and logistics hub for the army fighting the RSF. Tuesday's attack led to the temporary suspension of operations at Sudan's only functioning international airport yet again. It also resulted in a power outage across the city. The government accused the UAE of supplying the drones used by the RSF in the attacks and announced cutting off diplomatic ties.
We will continue to fight and defend our people, and such terrorist operations will not frighten us. And if there is a will from the international community which claims to fight terrorism, this is the biggest terror from the United Arab Emirates, which is supplying these drones.
The attacks come as the army prepares for a large-scale offensive to take back control of the western region of Darfur from the RSF. The paramilitary may have lost control of the capital, but it seems to be sending a message to the Sudanese army that, even without fighters on the ground, it can still reach areas the army controls. Sudan's conflict, which has already caused the world's largest humanitarian crisis, and which many hoped would be retracting following recent army gains, seems to be expanding yet again. Hiba Morgan, Al Jazeera, Khartoum.
Winds blowing across the hills of Masafariyata in the occupied West Bank muffle the sound of heavy machinery demolishing Palestinian homes. With little warning and even less clarity on where they'll be able to go next. Amnesty International says the forced removal of civilians against their will constitutes a grave breach of the Geneva Conventions and amounts to a war crime.
The Israelis haven't stopped attacking this area for the last 20 years. They've stormed this village and destroyed houses for more than 20 times. I just want them to know that I will never leave my land. Better for me to be killed here rather than abandoning my land. This will never happen.
Masafariyata is home to more than 1,200 people in 8 villages and has faced a growing number of attacks from both the Israeli military and settlers. Oscar-winning Palestinian filmmaker Bassel Adra says people are living under the constant threat of forced displacement.
They want us to leave the area to build settlements. We are here in the open and literally we don't know where to go. We don't have even tents to stay in. They destroyed everything.
Israel has designated large parts of the area as a military training zone. Palestinians are banned from constructing any buildings here, and if they do, they're subject to demolition orders.
The Israelis want to force us to leave in order to expand the Israeli settlements. The village is surrounded on all sides by settlement outposts. The Israeli army want to get rid of the Palestinians and expand the settlements around and inside the village. At the end of the day, we will never abandon our land.
Many families have lived in this region since before Israel's occupation of the West Bank began in 1967. Today, they find themselves surrounded by a belt of illegal Israeli settlements and are facing increasing violence and threats. Mike Lappel, Al Jazeera.
Canada's Mark Carney has appeared with President Trump at the White House, and there were at times tetchy exchanges over tariffs and over Mr. Trump's repeated calls for Canada to become the 51st state of the US. Sarah Smith reports now from Washington.
The friendly greetings suggest they do want to try to get along, with their body language in sync. Almost. It was Mark Carney's vigorous opposition to Donald Trump and his taunts about making Canada the 51st American state that helped to win him the recent Canadian election.
We are supporting our friends and neighbors in the crosshairs of President Trump through a crisis that we did not create. We will fight back with everything we have.
Canadian aluminium, as well as steel, vehicles and car parts, have all been hit hard by 25% tariffs when they're exported to America. Can Mr. Carney negotiate a tariff reduction?
I don't know. He's coming to see me. I'm not sure what he wants to see me about, but I guess he wants to make a deal. Everybody does.
It's attitudes like this that will not make negotiations easier.
Can we make a deal with Canada?
I think it's really complex. I think this is really complex because they have been basically feeding off of us for decades upon decades upon decades, right? They have their socialist regime.
Canada, if you ever had a problem.
In the Oval Office, Donald Trump was asked if he still wants to take over Canada.
It would really be a wonderful marriage because it's two places that get along very well. They like each other a lot.
Well, if I may, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale.
Mr. Trump acknowledged that they do have some tough points to discuss, but says he thinks that will be fine. They'll be talking about the war in Ukraine as well. And he claims America will always be friends with Canada. While he had the TV cameras in the Oval Office, Donald Trump took the opportunity to also make a couple of pretty big foreign policy announcements. First off, he said that Houthi rebels in Yemen had told the United States that they do not want to fight anymore, that they have pledged to stop attacking international shipping, and that as a result, the US bombing campaign against them will be over effective immediately, said President Trump. And then he teased what he called a very, very big, very, very positive announcement yet to come. He is leaving on a trip to the Middle East, visiting Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates and Qatar next week. And he said before he goes, he will make a really important announcement on a certain subject. He said the most important that's been made for years. That may be something to do with the Middle East peace process. It may be something else. We wait to find out either later this week or the beginning of next.
The U.S. trade deficit widened to a record high in March as businesses boosted imports of goods ahead of President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs. That dragged gross domestic product into negative territory in the first quarter for the first time in 3 years. The report from the Commerce Department on Tuesday showed the nation imported a record amount of goods from 10 countries, including Mexico and Vietnam. Imports from China were, however, the lowest in 5 years and could drop further as Trump has hiked duties on Chinese goods to a staggering 145%. While reciprocal tariffs with most of the United States' trading partners were suspended for 90 days, duties on Chinese goods came into effect in early April, triggering a trade war with Beijing. One economist told Reuters that businesses are, quote, clearly scrambling during this time of unprecedented change and that, quote, the worst is undoubtedly yet to come, adding that there are still no trade deals that have been announced. The trade gap jumped 14% to a record $140.5 billion, exceeding the forecast of economists polled by Reuters. Imports rose to an all-time high, driven by pharmaceutical-related goods, computer accessories, and auto parts. The government reported last week that the trade deficit cut a record 4.83 percentage points from GDP last quarter, resulting in the economy contracting for the first time since early 2022. Trump sees the tariffs as a tool to raise revenue to offset his promised tax cuts and to revive a long-declining U.S. industrial base. Economists expect the flood of imports to ebb by May, which could help GDP to rebound in the second quarter. But they caution that the lift from subsiding imports could be offset by a drop in exports as other nations boycott American goods and travel.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were:
a triple celebration for the St. Kitts Nevis Fire and Rescue Services hosts a week of activities.
ECCB Governor highlights strategic priorities for ECCU development during 2025 IMF spring meetings. St. Kitts Nevis marks historic progress in road infrastructure and water development. Cheslin Hutton in police custody. Grenada addresses recommendations in human rights report other countries have recommended. St. Lucia and Martinique strengthen ties with new agreements. Internationally, Sudan severs ties with the UAE after RSF drone strikes on Port Sudan. Thank you for listening.